Sup, welcome back to Tales to Morrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today, and we got some RPG horror stories to read out. I am honestly shocked at the progress of the channel, and it feels like we are just now breaking almost 100 subs. We're not there. It's like, last time I checked, it was like 97 subs, but that's quite a lot for the tiny time that I've been doing this, so thank you very much for subscribing, and I hope you're enjoying the content, and thank you so much for all the feedback in the comments over the stories or what I do here or myself. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the first RPG horror story. Came across my first real issue with the Matt Mercer effect this week. Probably a tame one, but the substandard, but here we go. So I run a lot of D&D. I've even done it professionally as a paid DM, though not anymore. That's a separate post altogether, I think. But whilst I see and read a lot about DMs having issues with players who are introduced to the hobby through Stranger Things or Critical Role, this is the first time I've actually stumbled over this issue myself, and I'm kinda salty about it for two reasons. One, the player in question ground the game to a halt in order to pitch and debate me running a class feature in a particular way. Two, as a veteran player and DM himself, he really ought to know better. To clarify on the Matt Mercer effect, it's basically where a player joins a game and expects the DM to be basically running the game like how Matt Mercer from Critical Role would run, with improv, with silly voices, with a bit of that professional gravitas from the years of experience that Matt Mercer has. Every player and every DM are going to be different from one another, so it's a little bit silly to have these ridiculously absurd expectations to have every player to be the same as any other player or DM to be the same as any other DM. It's always really good etiquette when you're joining your first D&D game is to go in without any grand expectations. Obviously, you want to make sure that the story is cohesive, the players are nice, the DM is nice, and that's about it. I mean, that's the bare essentials that you really need to worry about. Storytelling, the combat, the RP, the improvisation, the world building and stuff. And that's going to be different because every DM gives you the experience that they feel like would suit you best. Imagine if it was in reverse, where every single DM expected the players to be like the cast of Critical Role, where they do voice acting and improvisation and comedy. It'd be a little bit too much, right? In fairness, I was asking for trouble when I, at this player's request, funnily enough, allowed the Blood Hunter class, a class that Matt Mercer created. My only real defense is that 1. Curse of Strahd is an appropriate setting for an edgelord class like Blood Hunter, and 2. The issue is separate to the rules as written of Blood Hunter anyway. Player decides to play a Goblin, a small race, takes the Order of the Lycan subclass. All fair enough, he has gone for his Were-Shark transformation, that's really cool. I should also explain at this point that whilst the player will deny this, he is one of those players that absolutely loves to win, and will always try to put his character in a position to do so. That's not a problem by any means, but it also means that he really doesn't like it when his character isn't in that position. Yes, the winning in D&D. When you're telling a story and playing with other players and cooperatively playing, you're all telling a story together. If everybody's having fun, then that's considered winning. But most players consider that, whenever they get main character moments or whenever they get the final kills and stuff as winning, and becomes like a weird way to compete against other players or maybe a DM. You win D&D by playing and cooperating together. You don't just win by getting the most kills. That's not how it works. Anyway, after a PC died last session, the party starts this session looting the body. Lol. And Goblin eyes this heavy crossbow and calls dibs. I say that's fine, and gently remind them that small-sized creatures have disadvantage on using heavy weapons. He tries to argue, no, I'm sure that's only tiny size. Cue the game being ground to a halt as we double-check. Nope, I'm right. Small size or smaller. Sorry. Let's move on. What about if I transform using hybrid transformation? I could be one size larger, right? He asks. Nope, nothing in the rules as written about that. And I'm not about to allow it because if a medium-sized creature played this class, they become large size when transformed, and that has major mechanical consequences, especially regarding reach, etc. Well, Matt Mercer says it could be run this way, and yet curiously didn't allow it when writing up the class. I'm salty because this was a debate that stopped the game, and then dragged on because the player wouldn't initially accept a no as an answer until he felt he's exhausted all of his excuses. This was also not a discussion that needed to happen there and then. I'm very happy to discuss the reasoning between sessions. Okay, to be fair to the player, being salty at the player probably doesn't improve things overall, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's conflict resolution, right? If people are just salty at each other, nothing gets done and nothing can happen. I can understand where the DM is coming from, sure. They're probably annoyed that, you know, maybe you play a game a little bit more flack over it and try to argue the rules and everything, how to bend them around. But listen, if the DM tells you, listen, no is no, then you gotta just drop it and let it go. But it seems like this player might have egged on the DM a little bit too much, so maybe the saltness is justified. But as a PSA to players, if you're trying to butter up your DM into allowing something to be run in a particular way, the worst thing you could say is, Matt Mercer says you can, or that's how Matt Mercer does it. Because the one thing I was going to allow is for them to be able to breathe underwater in hybrid form. Makes sense for Wereshark, despite there not being anything in the rules as written to allow it. But I'm now genuinely worried that I'll be the proverbial inch that becomes the mile. Oh well, if you're going to allow that, then reveals long list of demands, including size growth again. Okay, yeah, the player's doing a really shitty thing by expecting the DM to do things just because, well, Matt Mercer would allow it. You know what? Maybe Matt Mercer would allow it. Maybe Matt Mercer doesn't allow it, but you're in this game with this DM. And if this DM says he doesn't allow it, then he doesn't allow it. The least you can do is show a little bit of respect to your DM that you have, not Matt Mercer or somebody else out there, and just understand that if your DM says they don't allow it, then they don't allow it. So yeah, nothing guru breaking or anything like that. I'm dreading the conversation with him because it's not the first time I've had to address behavior, including a moment this session before last, actually, where he tried to lie about what I said earlier in the session. I was grateful to have other players back me up on that one. They're great in low-stakes D&D games and campaigns or roleplay rules over mechanics, but more serious games seem to bring out something unpleasant in them. Now that I think about it, maybe that's the conversation I need to have with them. Imagine if the DM was like, hey Goblin, why don't you act, insert critical role character, or critical role cast member. Why don't you act more like them? Alright, it would just be ridiculous, right? Rules for thee, but not for me. Be respectful to your DMs. Your DMs are putting a lot of time and effort into making sure that you have a unique experience and doing their very best, but I think 99% of DMs are actually trying to do their best to provide you with a really nice D&D experience. So be respectful to them. DM brings my trauma to the table, claiming it will be good therapy. Excuse my formatting / typing style, as I rarely use Reddit. This is a horror story that my friends still laugh and think back on it to this day, so I figured why not share it here. Content warning, mention of, yeah, I don't know what YouTube is gonna do if I actually say these things out loud, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover my tiefling butt and replace the words if you don't mind. My childhood friend, I'll call them tiefling, and I were fresh into college. We had played D&D a lot as kids, and they were trying to make some friends. I was a bit quieter and less social than them, so I mostly just followed the lead. They met someone in our class, who I will call Elf, and she told us there was a D&D group in one of the school clubs looking for 2 new players. I was a bit nervous and feared for the worst, but my friend was excited to give it a chance. Elf brought Tiefling and I to the first game that week. Besides us 3, there were 4 other players, and the DM, big party I know, I'll refer to them as Drow, Dragon, Kenku, Human, and the DM. The first couple of few went well. I was a bit awkward in the beginning, but I got along well with all the other group members. The DM would make some jokes I found uncomfortable, specifically about bad adult no good stuff and struggle snuggle bad stuff, but after stating that I found it distasteful, he would usually stop. Suddenly, the DM asked us if we would like to play at his house for the next game. Nobody minded, so we planned accordingly. The next session at his house went well, but towards the end, he mentioned we had relocated due to him being kicked out of the club space at the school due to an ex-girlfriend who was also a club member, falsely accusing him of inappropriate behavior. Looking back, I had a feeling he may have been lying to us. He was very vague with us, but we told him we didn't mind playing at his house. I mean, yeah, that's very red flag, and I'm hoping it doesn't get bad, but it is an RPG horror story, so it's probably gonna get bad. As we all started getting comfortable, he invited us to stay the night after D&D. The first night that the party members stayed over, we planned to do another session the next day. And that night, Drow, DM, and I stayed up very late talking about our past and bonding. I revealed to the two of them that why the DM's jokes made me early in the game made me uncomfortable was because as a minor, I'd been a victim of grooming and assault. That it was a sensitive topic for me, but it was in the past and I had grown past it. They both were very respectful and the DM seemed to understand, and I went to sleep feeling like I had managed to grow closer to them and I considered the whole group my friends. For context, I was playing a massive Foo Dog homebrew race samurai fighter. He was an ex-general who was looking for his last remaining daughter. This is important. He was a bit of a stoic father figure to the group, and as a character, he made me feel very strong. We had just fought a strong villain and flew of minions, so as a team recuperated, I took the initiative to see what was in the cellar of the main floor. The DM initially described it as a dingy dungeon-esque room. Cages lined the walls, all containing prisoners save for one empty cage at the end. My character eagerly inspected the one at the end, finding hair and blood that was said to belong to my daughter. In an emotional moment, I unlocked all the cages and began giving a speech to the prisoners, encouraging them to be strong men I knew they were. Come fight by our side. My character was a bit traditional. I purposely wrote him off being unintentionally misogynistic due to a traditional upbringing. Now, the word misogynistic is used here, and typically I'm thinking of like, oh, somebody just being a dirtbag to women. But I'm assuming the context here is more like encouraging to be more masculine or tough or something. I'm hoping that there's a positive context to this, that it's not just low-key misogynistic for the sake of being misogynistic, you know? Anyway, just a little side comment. This is when the DM began to laugh, and then informed me that all the prisoners were women and weren't leaving their cages, staring at me with soulless, bewildered eyes. You'd think he would have mentioned they were all women when describing the room initially, but oh well. Something wasn't clicking for me, and I didn't understand what he was trying to say. Why were they all women? The DM then clarified that all these women were being kept in the cellar as... Oh, wait, and that also means the daughter was... That's... makes my skin crawl a little bit. Why would the DM do that? Especially after the player opened up about like the whole thing. That's crossing a lot of lines. First of all, when the player told you about their experiences, it was for the sake of trust. It wasn't for you to creatively use that for storytelling for their character. And especially because the OP's character is looking for their child, putting that down, that they were like, God, how do I even word it? I guess person for exploit is the best way I can put it down without saying it directly. What the f... I sat there shocked as I realized he was telling me that my daughter, who in lore was a minor, have been kept in a cage and assaulted. This was when he was taking my character after I had opened up to him the night before. Yeah, but like, why? Why would you do that? Have you considered that, hey, maybe it's a sensitive topic and the player opened up to you because they don't want you to make these sort of comments or sort of jokes or whatever, any sort of insinuation in the game or D&D? You decide, hey, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take what the OP told me, I'm gonna use it in the game. Fucking Capital, what a dickhead. I didn't know how to stand up for myself properly back then and excused myself to the bathroom, where I couldn't help but become emotional. Composed myself after a few minutes and returned to the table to keep playing. The rest of the players beside the human seemed pretty uncomfortable during that interaction, so I assumed they felt a similar way that I did. Yeah, I think anybody would feel uncomfortable. Anybody would feel uncomfortable. Why would the DM do that sort of thing? Let's say hypothetically, right? Okay, I have arachnophobia, right? I'm scared of spiders, right? And if I tell the DM, yeah, I'm scared of spiders, you know, it'd be the polite thing for the DM to do is to basically be like, hey, so what are your limits on spiders? Should I just not use them at all? I'd be like, no, man, f me up, fam. I'm down for D&D spiders, just I don't like IRL spiders or like big VR spiders like in Skyrim or something. But like, just because I'm okay with my phobia being put into a game or any other games because I'm over it now, doesn't mean you should be taking what the player said, that specifically they previously said they don't like that you did that, and just stick it into D&D be like that again. Why? Why do you think that was a good idea, DM? Why do you think that was a good idea? For your good storytelling, content, whatever that you're trying to do? It's bad. No, don't use people's traumas like that unless you have at least their consent. And even then, there has to be a thematic reason for it in the first place. I mentioned to the DM at the end of the game that I didn't think what he did was fair, and that I didn't want to deal with something like that in a game that I used to escape from real life. But he responded, quite literally while smirking, well, you know, D&D is a great place to work this kind of thing out. Just see it as a form of therapy. No, if you want to go therapy, you go to a fucking therapist. You don't take it and bring it to D&D. Especially since you didn't even get consent from the OP. You just threw it in because you felt like it. You thought it would be a very zany thing for you to do, just be good, juicy content. Listen, I get it. You probably don't have this sort of trauma as well, and you probably don't think of it as a big deal, which is kind of shitty of you. But you know, to the OP and to anybody else that has to deal with that sort of stuff and have these sort of traumas they carry with them, it's difficult. It's really fucking difficult. So the least you can do is first talk to your players and be like, hey, so what's off limits, what's not off limits, right? Most DMs can do that normally, but you decided that just, hey, I'm gonna just throw in your trauma because suddenly the great world of D&D that players use as escapism, we're gonna just make it real again. Why can't D&D be an escapism fantasy for some people? Listen, some people, they just want to play games, video games, or TTRPGs, or watch movies, or do whatever, because they don't have to worry about the daily life, or traumas, or anything like that whatsoever, and they can just enjoy themselves for once. And you decided, hey, you know what was more important? My plot point. So I'm going to use your trauma to make my story more interesting or zany. What a dickhead. This is not even a topic on sensitivity, it's just about respect. The least you could do is show all your players, some modicum of respect, and understand there's some things they're okay with and some they aren't with. What's going on with this DM? What's up with this? Like, why? What is the point of this? I had no idea what to say to this, so the topic was mostly dropped as I stewed back to it for the rest of the night. The story of this group goes much deeper, and my friends and all have their own horror stories as well, but I think I've already written enough, and this is a pretty big wall of text. He eventually kicked me from the party for an insane reason, and most of the players left with me to play a new game that I was DMing instead. TLDR, Creepy DM pushes boundaries and using his game to poke fun at a traumatic experience I told him about in private. I'm happy that the OP can look back at this and not have any sort of bitter or ill feelings because, like, this is messed up, man. This is terrible. Nobody should have to deal with D&D suddenly becoming your therapy or having your traumas and nightmares be used as entertainment or plot points. That is the worst possible excuse to include people's trauma because it's therapy. If somebody wants therapy, they'll go to a fucking therapist. They don't need it in D&D or any of their escapist fantasies. Let people have escapist fantasies. Let them enjoy it in peace without having to bring trauma in. This DM is awful, terrible. But I'm glad that the OP and the rest of the players are enjoying their game, and I hope they are having fun still to this very day. I'm mad, dude. I'm actually fuming. I'm actually mad. And that'll be our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I hope you had a blast. If you want to leave any feedback for any of the stories or myself, comments down in the description below. If you want to see more of this, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to leave any sort of feedback, but you don't want to say anything, leave a like if you want to. It's up to you. I don't know if it affects YouTube in any way or not. I'll see you guys next time on more Tales tomorrow. See you later.